You've returned, and to those of you new to our tale, permit me to extend a most Devonshire and Sherlockian greeting. Kick off your boots, grasp a piping hot cup of tea, and settle in for an episode that shall prepare you for the cool winter nights drawing ever nearer. Of course, I must confess that life here, perched at such vast heights above sea level, is not nearly so bright, pleasant or sun-dappled as the rest of this fair land. They do say we are cheated of an entire month of summer, which is delivered a month late in any case. But I suspect the truth is even less generous. We have in fact been awaiting the warmth for several weeks now, in vain. Perhaps a swift escape to France, to visit our Chatelaine friends, might restore the spirits, or failing that, somewhere altogether more exotic, where one might thaw out for a week or two. Until then, however, we must rely on wood smoke, beech logs, and the faint hope of sunshine. With winter drawing ever closer, we decided it was time to pause momentarily from our labours inside the house and step outside into the copse for a little tree management. Our first subject revealed herself, a great beech, long dead, though still standing with a certain stately dignity. It is, of course, rather sad to see her go, yet she shall not be wasted. Her wood will keep the fires burning brightly through the cold months ahead, and in her place, at least 2 young trees will be planted within the grounds, ensuring the cycle continues as it must upon Dartmoor. With tools prepped and ready to roar, Watson ascended the ladder, kitted out with climbing harness, safety ropes, and the full array of essential equipment. Watson has many years of climbing and tree cutting experience under his belt, a most fortunate thing when one owns a property such as this. Once securely tied in with every anchor point checked, he began the task. Starting with the smaller branches, he worked carefully around the crown, cutting those light enough to drop harmlessly to the ground. Before we'd even begun, Watson had given us all a thorough briefing, where each of us was to stand, what our roles were, and, most importantly, how to avoid the indignity of a lump of beech landing squarely on our heads. With limb after limb brought safely to the ground, and Watson making the whole business look absurdly easy, we soon had the beginnings of this winter's firewood neatly stacked. Of course, a tree of such stature will in truth provide no more than a fortnight's worth of heat once cut. But happily, with the stockpile we began drying at the start of summer, and a few additional deliveries to bolster the heap, we should be well supplied. Thus, when the gales howl across the moor and the windows rattle in their frames, we will at least have one small certainty, a fire blazing in the hearth, and the promise of warmish rooms within, which may prove most vital, as we cannot be entirely sure when any type of central heating will be operational. When the first larger limb was ready, it was tied securely to the guide rope, which my nephew manned with great seriousness, as myself standing at his side. The rope was threaded through a figure of 8 to ensure it could not slip or run away uncontrolled. With the cut made, the branch swung free. To my nephew's delight, he guided it down gracefully to the ground, untied it, and then called his instructions back up to Uncle Watson, all clear and ready for the next. As you can see, it was a fairly typical Dartmoor day. The wind was up, the air carried a distinct chill, and everything seemed to lean sideways just a little. Fortunately, it wasn't too fierce for the task at hand, though the drone, piloted valiantly by my brother, was working very hard indeed to stabilise itself. By some miracle, it survived without being swept into a branch or embedded in a nearby tree, and captured some splendid footage along the way. Chainsaws at the ready, Watson set to work around the tree, making short work of the task. With regular checks to ensure everyone, including the drone, was safely positioned and well clear of danger, he moved steadily through the remaining upper limbs. One by one they were dispatched until the tree stood stripped and ready. At this point, nephew number 1 released the safety guide rope from the section of trunk just cut, reset the figure of 8, and passed the end back up to Watson. With everything secured once more, he prepared for one last small cut, and then the final cut of the day. One clean wedge cut, a neat cheese slice carved precisely in the direction we intended the tree to fall, and all was ready. The ropes were set, the team in place, and the moment had come to take this great beech down. Now, and we say this with a laugh, after all the careful filming on the ground and in the air, we somehow managed not to capture the tree actually falling, a classic face-palm moment. To add insult to injury, the drone chose that exact time to declare its battery low and fly itself home. In the end, though, the finale was less dramatic than expected. So much weight had already been removed to protect our ancient granite walls that the tree offered more of a polite collapse than a grand crash. My nephew hauled the majority of the firewood up to the house and stacked it neatly, ready to continue drying. The following day, Watson brought up the remaining pieces, all now prepared to be cut into perfect lengths for the wood burners. There's still a bit to do, but we are almost there. The plan for this winter is to store the majority of our firewood in the coach house, at least until we decide on a more permanent home for it. So the next task was to clear out the back corner, which until now had been serving as a makeshift dumping ground for various bits of timber. Before tackling the floor properly, Watson took to his hands and knees with a brush, sweeping away weeks' worth of wood chips and sawdust left behind from recent projects. It was a slow but necessary task, clearing the space so we could finally see what we were working with underneath. We believe this is probably the original floor of the coach house, though we still need to investigate a little further to be sure. Either way, we love it. It just needed a proper scrub down. Watson set about removing all of the old mechanic's residue from the drain, which was slightly unpleasant to say the least. But with that gone, and the pressure washer put down into its guts, the water was soon flowing smoothly into what we think is a soakaway. Again, something we'll need to explore further sometime soon. I then set about removing some of the algae from the granite walls so that we could stack the timber neatly up against them. A good round of pressure washing made a huge difference, clearing away years of build-up and leaving the stone looking bright and clean once more. In the meantime, outside, Watson began making a base for the timber to sit on. That way, if any water does manage to creep into the coach house on those bitterly cold, gale-forced Dartmoor days, our firewood will stay nice and dry, ready for burning when we need it most. As this is only a temporary setup for this winter, it doesn't really matter if the pallets get slightly damp or wet. By next year, we'll definitely have a whole new location created, one that will properly house all of our future firewood. Watson's plan was to build a wood store using only what we already had, apart from the odd pallet here and there. The store needed proper ends to keep the timber off the granite walls and allow air to circulate, keeping the logs dry while they continued to season. And, within the blink of an eye, Watson had his new wood store finished and standing ready for the mammoth job of cutting, splitting, and stacking everything we had prepared for storage. box on the far left is destined to hold all of our smaller bits of kindling and starter logs, which we've yet to collect from the copse. Realistically, we're going to have far more than this one box will ever contain, but it's a great start. The 2-day cutting and splitting marathon then began. As luck would have it, the weather turned in our favour, giving us the most glorious bank holiday weekend of sunshine. Absolutely perfect conditions for firewood prep. We seem to have lucked in with a great mix, plenty of dense hardwood, a good amount of oak and beech from our own trees, and a scattering of softer wood. The latter won't generate much heat, but it will certainly do the job of getting our fires started. Whilst all the wood was being chopped, I decided it was time to uncover the coach house floor that extends out through the doorway, no longer to be smothered by grass and the odd weed that had crept across the top of it. The result is so much better, and it's lovely to see it clear again at the foot of the door. I stepped away for a while to give the house a bubble bath, as one does, and when I returned, the coach house door, along with the newly uncovered floor, was absolutely overflowing with chopped firewood. I've no idea where Watson found all of his energy, but the results were impressive. The wood seemed to be pouring through the doorway, practically eager to be stacked, as though each log had marched itself in and was waiting politely for its place in the pile. Within another blink, Watson had everything neatly stacked and was already moving on to the next pallet's worth of wood. Stepping back into the courtyard, which sits around the rear of the house, there's no shortage of work awaiting us over the coming weeks. One of the bigger tasks, ideally before winter, though perhaps not this year, is the pointing, that charming yet troublesome hallmark of houses from this era. But before we tumble too far down that rabbit hole, the house is due for a thorough bubble bath, washing away the lichen, centuries of grime, and revealing the granite as it was meant to be seen. I must confess I'm rather fond of the orange fuzz. I've taken more close-up photographs of it than I care to admit. But alas, it must go. The pointing needs attention, and that can't begin until the stone is clean. Here's to giving one's house a bubble bath. I must admit it's an oddly satisfying task, peeling back the layers of moss and grime to uncover the brighter granite hidden beneath. The final result was a vast improvement all round. With the moss and algae gone, even the tired, cracked courtyard tiles seemed to take on a new lease of life. Well, for now at least. My next bubble bath challenge of the day was the hopper room, its wooden cladding, along with the rendered wall beside it. Both were cloaked in green, almost black in appearance, a far cry from how they were ever meant to look. At the same time, I set about clearing the roof and gutters of their mossy build-up, a job long overdue. Fortunately, the sun made a rare appearance just in time, sparing me from what might otherwise have been a very cold and soggy Dartmoor endeavour. So off I went again, power washer in hand, and very satisfyingly stripped away the green from the wooden cladding to reveal the golden timber hiding beneath. The difference was like night and day, and once it dried, the transformation was remarkable, a huge improvement. We haven't quite decided yet whether to oil the wood or paint the entire thing, but either way it's due for a major overhaul, and we'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. Next, I couldn't resist washing down the roof. With all the granite in the courtyard looking 1,000,000 times better than it has in at least the last 10 years, the roof was next in line. I have to say it was an incredibly satisfying task, watching soot, dirt, and years of moss disappear within seconds. I still have more washing of the exterior of the house to do, but for now this part is looking 1,000,000 times brighter, fresher, and ready for the big overhaul that's about to begin next week. We'll be rolling up our sleeves once again, tackling the next stage of repairs, and finally starting to bring this corner of the house back to life, just in time to face the winter ahead. For now, we bid you a fond farewell and look forward to seeing you again soon as we continue wrangling this splendid Victorian house back to life. We'll leave you with the full moon from a fortnight ago, a glowing orange lantern drifting across the skyline. It felt like the house itself was pausing to admire it, and we hope you enjoy it just as much as we did. Until next time, may your own week be filled with small triumphs, satisfying tasks, and perhaps the occasional well-earned cup of tea. We'll see you again very soon. And please don't forget to subscribe.